Okay, today we're going to talk about raising your spirit from the dead. It's real short and simple. And if you really believe, and it can actually happen. If you notice that it tells us to not to put any gods or graven images before God. It says don't put any gods or graven images before God. So that's a very major factor in raising your spirit from the dead. A lot of our spirits are dead because we haven't raised our spirits from the dead. So in order for us to raise our spirits from the dead, there's a few things we must understand and a few things that we must do. One of the things that we must understand and must do is we must call our names. So for an example, my name is Max. So if I want to raise my spirit from the dead and allow my spirit to become alive and allow the power that's within me, I will have to call my name. I will have to meditate on my name. See, what we do as a people is we call on other names. We call on other gods and we call on other names. Therefore, we're raising their spirits, which is not here in the present with us, but only here in the spirit with us. But if we call on our names, which is in the physical realm, which is in the present, which is in the now, then we can actually allow our spirits to become alive, to be resurrected. So you would just meditate on your name by calling your name. For an example, Max. But I wouldn't say Max. I would just like you say in the name of Jesus, or just like you go to the Father. You have to call on your name. You have to call on your name. It is very important that you meditate on your name because you are connected to your name. See, we are trying to connect to a spirit that is not here in the physical realm with us. We're trying to connect to a spirit that's only in the spiritual realm with us, rather than connecting to a spirit that's in the physical realm with us. As like right now you're in the physical realm. Right now you're in the physical realm, in the now. This is why it's very important to understand the power of three. Once again, the Father in heaven, which would be before, and then the Son of God, which would be now, and then the Holy Spirit, which is the future, the spirits that's not in the present, the spirits that are in the future, the spirits that are not here, the spirits that are not present. The only spirit that is in the physical realm, that is in the present, as of right now today, is you and the people around you. But they teach us to call on other spirits so that our spirits never become alive, so that our spirits are never resurrected, so that we never reach the superpowers that we have. If you begin to meditate on your name, you'll begin to activate your psychic capabilities. You'll begin to activate your prophetic capabilities. You'll begin to, for an example, if you notice that even Jesus himself said, when you have seen the Father, you have seen him too. When you have seen the Son, you have seen him too. He said, when you have seen me, you have seen the Father. When you have seen me, you have seen the Son. Understand, when he prayed to the Father. A lot of people ask, who do God pray to? Well, if you understand, you would understand the answer to that question would be God prays to himself, his higher self, from his lower self. His lower self is in the now. His higher self is beyond the now, which would be above him. So is above, so is below. So begin to call on your name. Begin to meditate on your name. When you pray on you, because when you say your name over and over, Max, 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 you'll begin to feel your body, and the vibration of your body will begin to activate simply because you are connected to yourself. You are physically connected to yourself. When somebody calls your name, you automatically look up to see who's calling you because you are connected to that name. So if you call your name, you'll begin to see your spirit become one with yourself, from your lower self and your higher self, from your higher conscious and your lower conscious. You'll begin to see you become one with yourself. If, for an example, Jesus said in John 10:30, he said, I and the Father are one. So he was basically saying his conscious, his higher conscious, and his lower conscious are connected with one another. See, he understood on a realm that a lot of people have a hard time understanding. He understood in a way a lot of people have a hard time understanding because they're being taught misinformed. They're being taught to worship, and they're not being taught to become. If we're human beings, then one of our purposes is to become the things that we want to become. Beings is to be something, to become something. So therefore, make it short and simple. I'm not going to hold you all up. Call on your name. That's how you resurrect your spirit from the dead. That's how you activate your superhuman capabilities. That's how you begin to heal, prophesy. You begin to have psychic capabilities. You begin your intuition will become on a more higher frequency. Your spiritual capabilities will be on a more higher frequency as well. Your energies will be on a more higher frequency as well. And it's gonna feel uncomfortable at first because we have been conditioned and accustomed to calling on other names. You know, we talk about Moses, we talk about Elijah, we talk about Abraham, we talk about Jehovah, we talk about Jesus, we talk about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You know, the people that's in the Islamic, the Muslim tradition of things, they talk about Muhammad. You know, they talk about, Maryam, different things like that. The Sarah, Alhamdulillah, and a lot of those things. But how often do you call your name? Everybody else around you is calling your name, but how often do you call your name? When was the last time you sat in a quiet place, all alone, to yourself, by yourself, and called your name? When was the last time you sat somewhere by yourself and called your name? When was the last time you joined hands with somebody? If you have a wife, join hands with your wife and ask your wife to join you on calling your name. Ask your wife to call your name. And it's going to feel uncomfortable at first because we've been accustomed and we've been conditioned to call on a name that's not here. Understand, you are your first brother and you are your first sister. And like y'all's Bible say, how can a man love a God that he has not seen and hate his brother? And the first thing we do is we look for our brother, rather than to look in the mirror and say, I am my brother. Or if you're a woman, to look in the mirror and say, I am my sister. You are your first father. You are your first son. You are your first brother. You are your first sister. Therefore, if we stop looking for everything, trying to connect to all these different things and realize that we are what we've been looking for. And then when you realize that you are what you've been looking for, then begin to call on yourself, raise yourself, uplift yourself, encourage yourself, motivate yourself. You have to raise your vibrations, your frequencies, your energies. Call on your name, whatever your name is, whatever your name is, whatever that name is, and it's going to feel uncomfortable at first because we've been taught to call on another name so that we don't connect to ourselves, so that we don't connect to ourselves. So that's why that's why it's very important. That's why it's very important that we call on our names. And then you have to understand, people know who you are. People know exactly who you are. The thing is, they don't want you to find out who you are. They don't want you to find out that you are somebody. They want you to continuously look toward everybody else other than yourself as being special. Celebrities, athletes, artists, engineers, doctors. They want you to look toward everybody else but yourself. They want you to call on this person for this thing. They want you to call on that person for this. They want you to call on another person for that. How often do you call on yourself? How often do you call on yourself? And then once you grasp the concept of calling on yourself, you begin to see yourself call on others. And you begin to see yourself join with others and begin to teach others the power of calling on themselves, because we are the Son. We are the Son. So if we are the Son, if you look at the name Jesus, it's spelled Jesus. If you look at the way it's broken up, it's just us. It's just us. The Son represents just us. That's what the Son represents, just us. But the particular individual, the example of that individual that was given to us, was trying to show us how supreme of individuals we are. That's what that particular individual was trying to show us. He was trying to show us a reflection of ourselves. He was trying to show us a reflection of ourselves by showing us him. He was trying to show us us. And really they were actually showing us them, because all of them represented that name. That name was just a title that all of those different individuals carried. So you understand that Matthew was Jesus, John was Jesus, Mark was Jesus, Luke was Jesus, Barnabas was Jesus, Peter was Jesus, Paul was Jesus. Everybody that talked about Jesus was Jesus. Everybody that talked about Jesus was Jesus. They used that name as a title for anointings, like Messiah, Christ, different things like that. Therefore, understand the concept behind that. What did those individuals do? If you go back and restudy and you say, wow, this brother Max said that all of those individuals was Jesus. So do he believe that Jesus existed as an individual of himself? Yes, I do. I believe he existed in all of those individuals. That particular spirit existed in all of those particular individuals. Some of them had higher vibrational frequencies than others. Some of them had lower vibrational frequencies than others. Some of them had followers, some of them didn't. All of those individuals that talked about Jesus was Jesus. That was just a title that they used, that they received when they reached a certain level of understanding. They received when they reached a certain level of understanding. They received that. They received that. So in the beginning, it's actually gonna feel uncomfortable. It's actually gonna feel uncomfortable to call on your name. A lot of times we feel like we not somebody special. If you think about your whole lifespan, all of the things that you have survived, your trials, your tribulations, all the things that you have made it through, your success, your accomplishments, your setbacks, your fall offs, your get backs, your get back ups. You did that. When was the last time you thanked yourself? When was the last time you said thank you, Max? When was the last time you thanked yourself? When was the last time you praised yourself? Nobody else is going to praise you until you start praising yourself. They're going to continue to make you connect and praise something else that you cannot connect to, because if you begin to praise yourself, you'll begin to see yourself go higher than where you are. You'll begin to see yourself go further than where you've been if you begin to praise yourself. But if you continuously praise an entity that's not in the present with you, then you'll continuously depend on something other than yourself. You won't begin to see yourself as who you are, as a powerful being on the earth. And once you realize how powerful you are, then you will activate even more power within you. But as long as you give that power that's within you to something else as a substitute of yourself, then you won't activate even more power. You may be an individual that's had 10 cars, 10 houses. You may have an education. You might have had a lot of jobs. But if you give all that glory and all that praise to an entity other than yourself, you will become dependent on that entity. You'll become dependent on that entity. You'll become dependent on that entity. Who in the Bible was praising anything other than themselves? The reason why they were praising Jesus and thanking Jesus and following Jesus, those individuals was following those particular individuals that was using that title. It's like a trick. The truth and the lie is working together at the same time. You got the truth and the lie working together. It's designed for you not to figure out what's really happening. Matthew was a great individual that had followers. John was a great individual that had followers, and so was Mark, so was Luke. All of these individuals were following these individuals that was telling them about an individual named Jesus. For an example, say I wanted to talk about myself in third person and I used a different name other than my name. Say for an example, I'm telling you about my accomplishments in life or my trials and tribulations, but rather than me use my name Max, I use Sam or I use Vaughn. So if I'm telling you about me and I'm using a different name other than my name, the question is, why would I do such a thing? So that the receiver of this information doesn't pick up on the individual that's carrying this particular power. See, because then the receiver of the information won't understand that it was Matthew that they were talking about, but they used the title of Jesus to talk about it. That's why they all have those same stories. If you go from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you have all the same stories. Everybody was born a son. They were all sons. Everybody was born a son. From a father and a mother. They all might have been born without their fathers. It's a lot of us that's been born and didn't know our fathers right now today. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John were just individuals who were born and they fathers wasn't in their presence, and they had other fathers. And they was traveled and they learned and they studied, and then they began to share the teachings that they began to share. It was them, but they're telling us about this individual as if it was not them that they're telling us about, so that we don't never find out that it is us ourselves. See, understand, if we wake up, we become competition to those that are woke. As long as we remain asleep, we will continuously be controlled to those that are woke. But if we wake up, then we become competition to those that are woke. So we have a mass of individuals that have been selected and chosen to keep a mass of individuals asleep. It's almost like you would have to ask an individual to wake you up in order to be a part of the individuals that are woke. And then when they wake you up, it is a secret that is among them as individuals to keep a mass of individuals asleep. Because the more people that wake up, the more competition that the woke have. Why would corporations, governments, elites teach a group of individuals how to have a corporation, how to have generational economics? Why would they teach their competitors this? Why would they teach the consumers how not to be a consumer? Therefore, we have to pick up on what are these individuals doing different from us. They're waking up to their capabilities of what they can do, and then they walking right into it. They putting action right behind their ideas. They come up with an idea. I'm gonna create an iPhone or an Android phone. Or now they coming out with 5G. They coming out with 5G technology. They come up with an idea, and then they immediately activate that thought. They 100% believe in everything that they come up with. They're not waiting on something else to take them to where they're trying to go. They are literally one with themselves. They're not waiting on an entity that's not here to give them the keys that they need to go to where they're going. They're pretty much coming up with it themselves. They literally coming up with it themselves. Like telling an individual that economic empowerment, and I'm gonna leave y'all with this. Economic empowerment is extremely important among our culture of individuals. Economic empowerment. How do we become more economic empowerment? First, we have to understand slavery. We have to understand the definition of a slave. The definition of a slave is an individual that is controlled by another individual, an individual that is a debt to another individual. Debt meaning, what is a debt? Something that you owe an individual. So as long as you are a debt to someone, they have control over you. So for an example, if I take out a mortgage loan, a mortgage is another word for a loan. Whoever gives me that loan to purchase that property, I now become I now become an asset to the individual that provided me the loan to purchase the property. I become a debt to that institution. So, say for an example, somebody loans me $80,000. Loan me $80,000, and then they charge me 7% on that principal. Principal being 80,000, 7% being interest of the 80,000. The institution now owns me because I now owe them. So I spend the rest of my life as a asset to them, and they're a liability to me. So they're basically making money off of me because they loan me money, which makes me a slave, which means I'm working for the boss I have at my job, and I'm working for the bank that I owe this money to. Same thing with education. If I go to school and I say I want to be an engineer, or I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a chef, and they say it's going to cost you $40,000 to become a nurse, a doctor, an engineer, and then I seek a lender to loan me the $40,000 to get this education, and then they charge me 10% of the 40% of the 40,000 that they've just loaned me. So now I become a slave to the individual that just loaned me the $40,000 to receive this education, and then I become a debt to that institution. So now you have me working. I'm working for the boss I'm going to work for, and I'm working for the bank, and I'm working for the institution that I'm receiving this education for, and I'm working for the institution that supplied me the loan to receive this education. All of these are slave tactics. All of those are slave tactics, making sure that I'm in debt to society. So as long as I'm in debt to society, I am a slave to society. So I'm working to pay all these individuals. How is this relatable to us waking ourselves up? I didn't understand this until I began to call on my name. When I started calling on my name, when I started calling on Max and I started meditating on my name, it was almost like my mind began to expand. My thoughts, my thoughts began to open up in a different way. I began to see things in a different light. When I began to call on my name, I began to meditate on my name. I began to read things differently. I began to question things. I began to look at things from a different perspective. I began to develop my own opinion, my own perception when I began to call on my name, and I began to realize that I don't have to depend on somebody else explaining to me what these things mean. When I started calling on my name, my cognitive ability expanded. My it was almost like I got smarter all of a sudden. It was almost like I got brighter all of a sudden. Versus me depending on an entity such as Jesus or God or Muhammad or Jehovah or Allah and all these different entities that we call on to give me these answers. I began to depend on my own thoughts. Who told me that I could not think for myself? Who told me that I could not depend on my feelings? Who told me that I could not be independent? Who told me to depend on all these entities other than myself? Make me a lesser force and make me basically almost making me feel incapable and dependent on something else other than myself. So that's why it's very important. So if we go back to how do we come out of that? So what is the solution? So then once I realized what the problem was, once I realized what the problem was, I said, okay, I don't want to be an individual that just sit around and talk about problems. I don't want to be an individual that just sit around and come up with all these different problems. I said, so what is the solution to this? Now, we have a lot of individuals that have reached a high level in wealth, but they're just rich slaves. They're rich slaves. So excuse me, may I have some hot water, please? So the question is, what is a rich slave? A rich slave is an individual that has reached a high level of success, and then they live a $1 million lifestyle. They make sure that the money is generating back to them. Now I'm a millionaire. Now I'm a millionaire, but now I'm spending all my millions on billionaires. Now I'm making the people that's paying me millions billions. I'm giving the money right back to them. Because now that I'm a millionaire, I'm living $1 million lifestyle. So now I gotta have a 12-bedroom house, a 5-car garage. I gotta have a Lamborghini, a Ferrari. Thank you, ma'am. I have to have a Lamborghini, a Ferrari. I have to have a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, and all those things is great to have. Don't get me wrong. I would, all of us would love to have those things. So, what is the solution? Because we all know this. The solution is to unite. That's the only solution is to unite. The solution is to unite. We have people in position to set us free. We can create our own credit. We can create we can build our own bank, but we don't nobody is telling them how. Because nobody understands. Understand, what do banks do? What keeps a bank in business? Keeping people in debt is what keeps them in business. The more people that they have in debt, the more business they have. And that goes along with educational debt, and it also goes along with institutional debt. Debt is is major. Debt is major. When you understand when you understand that when you understand that you understand when you understand that you understand you understand how major the debt is when you understand that. So understand when you so understanding that a bank lends you money, but you never see the money, you just see a note. You never see the money, you just see a note that says that you've been given this money, but you don't get a briefcase of cash. You get a note that says that you're receiving this money. The only money that's being dispensed is the money that you make at work and that you give back to the bank. So let's say, for an example, that the $80,000 that they loaned you never existed in real hard cash. Does that money literally have to exist? Well, in some cases it does, simply because the person that owns that property has to receive the money. But the bank owns the property. The person that gave you the loan owns the property. Same individual that gives you the loan owns the property.